What's up, folks? This is Tony Brewer and Tyler. Tyler Hawkins is here with us. Tyler is a longtime friend of the show, a person that I know on Facebook, a Facebook friend. Parasocial relationships are very weird for me. We're
Yeah,
brothers in Christ. If I met you, like we'd have to build an in-person relationship, but like there's
yeah,
a pretty big foundation there to start from. So,
yeah, Tony, glad to be here. I don't know if you even remember this far back, but I connected with you back during the near churches time when you were
oh
down in our,
wow,
yeah. So, yeah, I've been following your work in ministry since the near churches page, and love being digital dudes or a word that
whatever,
starts with a B for bros. But main thing is we're brothers in Christ. So,
that'll work. Yeah, man. So I'm just gonna cut right to the chase.
yeah.
You are not only a minister, you're a located preacher. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That's right. I got a small church that I'm the pulpit minister for here in Ogden, Iowa,
Awesome.
and yeah, it's great church, great family. Love it here.
That's amazing. So you're also in the military, and I couldn't remember, and I should have asked when I was preparing the stuff for the show. What branch of the military, and what is your role in the military?
Yeah, so I'm in the branch. I'm in the Army,
All right.
and I've been in the Army for 10 years now.
Oh wow.
But I'm not active duty. I'm in the Iowa National Guard,
Okay.
and I currently serve and have been in the role serving as a chaplain for coming up on 6 years. So my first 4 years, I was enlisted as an intelligence analyst,
Okay.
and there's all the jokes in the world out there about military intelligence, right? Well, that was me. I was the butt of all of those jokes. But now, for the last 6 years, though, I've had the great blessing and honor of serving as a chaplain in the Iowa National Guard.
Okay. That's amazing. Well, let me tell you, I've gone through stages in my faith,
Mhm.
and we learned from Keith Mosier the very last, probably the last quarter of the very last year, or last few weeks of the last quarter of the last year. Brother Mosier, if I'm understanding correctly, and those of you in our listening audience, you may correct me. I'm thinking that his doctoral dissertation was on faith stages. It was a very interesting class, and there's faith stage 1, 2, and 3. And 2 and 3, which with 3 being more so the majority, is where most people are. And then typically somebody has some trauma, or they come face to face with a shortcoming or malevolence, excuse me. And, just so the Disney character really messes me up for that word. I
I
don't know
know
if
it.
I'm saying the character name or if I'm actually saying the word.
Yeah. Well,
So
she represents it, so
It
yeah, it'll work.
or she's supposed to be the archetypal malevolent force, okay?
Yes, yes,
No backstory, no redeeming quality, she is malevolent. So,
yeah.
people will meet up with a malevolent force, and they will kind of self-actualize, and it's not like the entirety of their being self-actualizes together. Like, you've got some places are in freeze points, there's some places you're always more actualized, more developed. But typically in the faith walk, um, you'll be defined by your group. Um, you'll take on the persona and the values of the group. But when you start differentiating, you're going into that faith stage 4. And Brother Mosier posited that's where like everybody that came to the Memphis School of Preaching was faith stage 4. They got there because something in their lives caused them to have to differentiate from the masses.
Mhm.
So I've gone through stages like that, and I think some places I'm faith stage 5 or 6. Some places I'm way back there, maybe on faith stage 2, and everybody is like that.
Mhm.
Well, in the time in my life in my development, I was very, very, I don't know if austere is the right word, but I drew very, very rigid boundaries of fellowship.
Mhm.
And while I don't think that there were a few times where I was wrong, but I think most of the time I was technically correct, but there was no nuance. There was nothing. Well, we may get into more of that, but I used to think that a Christian could not be a Christian and also be a chaplain, and it was because of fellowship issues. So I'm
Yeah.
really excited. I no longer feel that way, by the way. I
Oh, okay.
but I really wanted to explore that because
Yeah, yeah,
I figured, and this may be me being egocentric, if I work through that, there might be still people working through that, and it would be interesting for folks.
yeah,
So
yeah,
that's kind of I wanna get the story of Tyler Hawkins as a husband, a father, a Christian, a digital content creator, a chaplain, a preacher. How do you mash all that together? And I don't know how to do it, but just I've got questions and the
yeah,
interview questions, you've seen them.
yeah,
Let's just walk down these questions, and
yeah.
probably the more questions that we get answered, the more
Mhm.
questions we go over, the farther from the questions we'll get.
That's okay. That's okay. Sometimes the meat is where you least expect it. So
Yes, well, I tell everybody, if you wanna really learn the Bible, get a theologian rolling and start taking notes when he starts chasing rabbits.
yeah, yeah.
Really and truly, and that's me, that's you, that's your
Hmm.
teachers at school. You really get those nuggets, you really get those diamond bits to put on your shovel of study whenever you listen to a man that's got a lot of years going a tangent. So, I like the idea of getting away from the questions, but I gotta have the questions to start. So you ready?
Sure. Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Tyler, understanding the role of military chaplain, can you give us an overview of what a military chaplain does during I got on a daily basis, but you're not active duty. So,
Yeah.
during the course of carrying out your duty, what are some of the responsibilities that you would have?
Yeah, yeah. So that's a great question. That alone could help clarify a lot of what the expectations are, both professionally and spiritually, on chaplains. And the same core functions apply whether you're active duty or National Guard. It's just in actual application, I'm not full time on an army base doing this 40 to 80 hours a week. So I just don't have as many ministry opportunities for there to be times of potential controversy or times of great even ministerial success. I
Right.
see soldiers, at most 1 day a month because the way that chaplaincy in the army is set up. Now, other branches of military are somewhat similar, but they're not exact.
Okay.
And in the Army, we have an average ratio of about one chaplain per 600 to 700 soldiers.
Oh,
Yeah, and so it's a pretty large gap there in time in terms of the way that we provide support. And with my battalion that I'm with, so a battalion consists of 4 to 5 companies, depending on the battalion, and
mhm,
I'm on the battalion staff, which oversees all those companies. And so I've got about 600 to 700 soldiers across 5 different locations in the state of Iowa that on one drill weekend, I have to try to visit with them, and I have to weigh those odds of quality versus quantity. I could potentially try to see everybody, but I only see them for a few seconds. And is that really ministerial effective? Or do I see each group of soldiers maybe once a quarter in a year, but I actually get to spend a day with them, a full day? And so when I am spending time with soldiers in that way, what am I doing? Well, I'm fulfilling the same core competencies as an active duty chaplain who does it every day of the month. And so there's kind of the big three, and then there's kind of some sub-level ways of doing it. And the big three are you nurture the living, and well, that speaks for itself, right? You provide edification, and then you care for the wounded. And
mhm,
so, anytime there is any type of trauma or injury, or if you're in a combat environment, something catastrophic happens, and you've got soldiers on the battlefield that are wounded, that are dying. So care for the wounded. That's a second one. I don't really get to do a lot of that because I'm here stateside. I'm National Guard, not deployed anywhere right now. And
sure,
then the third competency is you honor the dead. And so when a soldier deceases, whether it's a soldier who dies, they heaven forbid, they're in a car crash on a random Monday. They're not active duty either, but they are going to have funeral honors, military
right,
honors at their civilian funeral. Well, usually a
okay,
chaplain helps coordinate with that and it helps play
okay,
a part in that. Or if you're active duty on a base, or if you're in a deployed environment, honor the dead. The chaplain really becomes the spearhead for organizing those services and bringing honor to the life and the military service of that fallen soldier.
sure.
And so those are the big three.
Would you please, Just because it sounds like those 3 things are something that's drilled into you. Just give us the 3 bullets. Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So nurture the living,
Nurture the living,
yeah, care for the wounded,
care for the wounded,
honor the dead.
honor the dead.
Yeah.
Man, if you can't preach that, you might need to find a new job.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I look at that, like, in to take this and run with it into left field, start talking about people, get your notes. Working at retail sales, there's an organization whose sales program is called GURA, and somebody was in the Marines when they come up with that. Hoo-ah! Anyway,
Right.
GURA is greet, uncover, recommend, and ask. Greet the customer, uncover their needs, so you gotta build connection and some kind of rapport, and then you assess the needs, you recommend a product that solves their needs, and then you ask for the sale. So you don't just be like, "Hey, sir, my name's Tony. What brings you in today?" "Well, got this crazy, something keeps killing my chickens, and I got a picture of this track." "Okay, well, that's a coyote if I ever saw it. It's certainly not a dog. Here's what some dog tracks looks like. You need this live trap, and this live
Mhm.
trap's $120." "Well, yeah, that would take care of it." "Well, would you like me to take this up front for you so you can do some shopping and it'll be there when you're ready to leave?" That's at like you're closing.
Mhm.
So I don't have to relate to that individual on any other level other than he's a human being with his particular paradigm
Yep.
and he has needs. And within the boundaries of my capabilities, I help him with those needs.
Yes.
And it doesn't like I'm not offering a right hand of fellowship, nor am I putting my stamp of approval on a man live trapping a coyote and whatever he does afterwards.
Mhm.
That's interesting. And I went the guru.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
really good
I
for
love that.
evangelism
It
as
is, that's
well.
great.
Yeah, you
That
just
that's
greet your prospect. You got to talk to them to figure out the need,
yeah,
and then of course, on and so on and so forth. But
yeah.
anyway,
What a
man,
great way
that's
to build
awesome.
connection. Yeah, yeah.
I like those. Do I feel like a little kid. Do it again. The 3.
Yeah, yeah, so we got nurture the living, which
Nurture
is
the living.
really the one that takes the most time, nurture the living,
Right.
and then care for the wounded,
Okay.
and then honor the dead.
Nurture
And
the living, care for the wounded, honor the dead.
yeah, and I'll tell you what, just because of the nature of me in the National Guard and what you would consider like part-time, I don't have a deep well of experience in caring for the wounded and honoring the dead as somebody that, say, an active duty chaplain might have. But what I will say is this: um, when it comes to nurturing the living, where you have the most opportunity to provide that edification and pastoral type of care and counseling and advisement, um, where you really build a reputation and make those connections is in those unique opportunities where you are caring for the wounded and honoring the dead.
Yeah.
That is what gains the respect from others and will then have them wanting to pursue your counsel and advice in other areas of life when they see the way that you've treated their battle buddy that was injured
Yeah.
or their best friend who just died. In the way that you care and honor those people, that opens up so many doors for what most of the ministry is about, which is nurturing the living.
That makes sense. I would imagine that if we could get you and LaBeth on here, that the 2 of y'all would have a very interesting conversation about proper boundaries as far as like, 'cause she has to counsel people who are members of the LGBTQ community,
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
and it is illegal for her to suggest conversion, like
Yeah, yeah.
well, so you're transgender and homosexual and furry and this, that, and the other. Well, maybe you just need to quit all that and get normal. Like, she could not
Mhm.
do that. She'd lose her license. She'd go to jail, maybe even in Canada. But
Yeah.
so how does she deal with that? I mean, there's even whenever this bill was passed in Canada, there were some people that said that, therapists cannot be therapists who are Christians in Canada because they've got to put their stamp of approval on the LGBTQ plus lifestyle. And that's just not the case,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah.
Very interesting. I think we've covered the primary responsibilities for a chaplain in the military. I like it. Let me see if I can do it.
Yeah.
I know I'm not going to get the wording right, but you care for the living, No, no, nurture the living, care
Nurture,
for
yeah,
the wounded,
yeah.
and then you honor the dead.
That's right, A plus.
Awesome. Awesome. I
Yeah.
would get good marks.
Yeah, well, I'll throw in one extra one because this is one that most, people aren't aware
Awesome.
of.
Okay.
This fall, because like I said, nurture the living, extremely broad umbrella.
Sure.
And most people, what they think is that pastoral care and counseling, which absolutely is it. But there is another huge component in the way that chaplaincy is set up, is that we are considered what is known as staff officers in the military. And so staff
Okay.
officers, what we do is we provide administrative level guidance to the commanders. So
Okay.
your battalion commander, that he is the person in charge of and directly responsible for all 600 soldiers beneath him.
Okay.
And the staff officers, we are his advisors. We are his wise men, to put it in a frame of Daniel or Nehemiah.
Sure.
We are the king's wise men that are providing counsel. And
Yeah.
so I am the one, as a chaplain, that's providing the moral and ethical and religious advisement to the commander. And so that is one of the avenues of professional components to being a chaplain that most people don't think about, is that it is the key, really not just key, it's the only advisor position that informs the commander of what the moral, ethical, and religious litmus test, how his soldiers are doing morally, ethically, and religiously in
It
his battalion.
it has to do with morale.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Morale. That's the word I was looking for. Yes. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
Morale.
Yeah. We're both the moral and the morale
Yeah.
officers, right? It's both.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
So
And, yep.
let me see if I can relate with this and engage with it from the perspective of I grew up. My dad used to love watching old war movies.
Hmm.
And I remember it was an old war movie. It had to be colorized or just in the beginning of the Technicolor era.
Hmm.
Like, it had that look like you're watching a painting set in motion.
Yeah.
And the Japanese were camped. Like, the Japanese had the Americans surrounded, and they were all hunkered down. And somebody died, and the army guy wanted to play taps to honor the dead, and I can't remember if there was a chaplain involved or not, but the general come out and said, "What are y'all doing? Don't do that. Don't." And he disallowed them to honor the dead. And in the movie, everybody, all the people were like, all the soldiers were, they were mad. They were like, "We got to honor our fallen," and this, that, and the other. And then they got a contingent and went to him and said, "Hey, why can't we do this? We want to honor our dead." He said, why can't we play the bugle or the whatever it was?" And he said, "Well, I don't care if you play, but that song means something. And the Japanese over there, I don't want them keeping score every time we play taps.
Hmm.
So if you want to play, have a dance, but play something lively. Act like you're living it up." Now, the reason I bring that up is that seems to me like a chaplain would have been able to come and said, "Hey, General, these men, they're surrounded, they're hunkered down, and if you don't allow them to, I'm getting teared up, dude.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you don't allow them to take care of their dead, they won't fight. They'll be
Yeah.
animals."
Yeah.
So,
You
like,
have to have that time for grieving. Hmm.
is it that the chaplain is there to remind people of their higher order?
Yes. Absolutely.
You're
Yeah.
not animals, even though we've trained you to kill?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the slogan for the Chaplain Corps is "For God and Country," in that order, and
Yeah,
that's a staple core. And one of the unique things, and now I'm not a history buff when it comes to the military. I mean, I appreciate the
sure.
military. That's why I'm in it. I love our country in the United States. But so I'm going to fail maybe on some of the details. But the Chaplain Corps predates our nation.
Okay.
So the Chaplain Corps was implemented by George Washington in 1775 when he was forming the official military regiment for the United
Yeah,
States, and when it was still colonies, and they were trying to form a new nation before the Revolution actually took place. One of the first things George Washington did was he ensured there was a chaplain corps because he recognized men on the battlefield needed to know that God was watching over them, and they needed to be aware of the of God's power and presence in all times and places. And so there were a chaplain corps was established to give soldiers that opportunity to still be with God when they are away from home, when they are away from their churches, when they are away from their
yeah.
families.
And of course, you and I, that is Jehovah God
Mhm.
through his Messiah,
Yes.
Jesus the Christ.
Yes.
But the reason why, and I think honestly, this if there were ever any residual doubts about navigating biblical fellowship and doctrinal integrity, is your role is not to teach anybody. Your role is to be a presence of the
Mhm.
supernatural, of the
Mhm.
metaphysical.
Mhm.
Your
Yep.
role is to be almost a physical manifestation of their why, maybe?
Yeah, yeah. It's the ever-present reminder,
Yeah,
to be more than just the carnal. And
yeah.
really, it's no different than the calling that all Christians are to have. It's just a unique area in which you're doing it.
Well, you could be a chaplain to a Muslim.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, you
absolutely.
could give spiritual advice to a Muslim and help that person retain their dignity and humanity going through this very difficult time in their life, so they won't be so scarred that when they come out of it, they might be open to receiving the truth down the road. And I would much rather that be coming from you than coming from a Muslim chaplain,
Mhm. Yeah,
because a
yeah.
Muslim chaplain is just gonna submit him into the Muslim faith.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, there's the truth and gentleness, right? And there
Yeah,
are many times when it's always both, but there are times when the gentleness has to come first in order to open doors.
yeah. I think Jesus could have been a military chaplain to Muslims, and half of them would have killed him, and the other half would be Christians, and he
Probably
would have
not wrong on that.
never gotten their face like Church of Christers do today.
Right.
You know
Right.
what I mean? And I
Yeah.
really hope I'm articulating this well and doing it justice.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's where, because I know with your wife working as a professional counselor, she has to wrestle with some of those same spiritual qualms that
Yeah,
any counselor does, to include as a military chaplain, because there are situations where it's like, man, yeah, I don't want to appear like I am directly endorsing or supporting anything, but at the same time, I'm just trying to do my best to ensure that there is safety, that there
yeah,
are protections in place. So, what allows for the chaplain corps to operate is the First Amendment of the Bill of
it
Rights. So,
is.
it's kind of weird because the chaplain corps was created first as General Washington is creating his army, but then the protections in which enables the chaplain corps to remain is the First Amendment. It's in the United States. The First Amendment is the freedom of speech, but the freedom to exercise religion
Yeah,
and not be prevented from that. And so the same First Amendment, which allows me to worship as a Christian and to be a Christian chaplain, is the same freedom that the Muslim soldier is afforded. That he can
yeah,
be, that he can practice his faith. And so I don't perform any Muslim services, but in my role as a counselor, that doesn't mean that I'm not going to do my best to provide a degree of counseling which will help him operate better as a soldier and come through life. And my prayer would always be that one day they'd be open to the truth of Jesus. But in the moment, my focus isn't evangelistic. That's the chaplaincy actually where it's not to get too far into the weeds because we still got a lot of questions for you to go through. But
sure,
hey, rabbit trails, right?
exactly.
One
Yeah,
of
we'll call questions to chase rabbits.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. So the big question, and this is, I get asked this by soldiers a lot too, like soldiers who come from, I'll just say, some flavor of Christianity, right?
Mhm.
And they'll come up and say, kind of in private conversation, about, how can you be a chaplain, a Christian chaplain? Don't you have to support other faiths? I said, well, no, 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 no. I mean, it kind of depends on what your definition of support is. The official doctrinal language is that chaplains, we are to perform or provide. And
Yeah,
so, in our role of performing, um, chaplains are chaplains are in the military to represent a certain faith body.
mhm.
And so we have what are known as ecclesiastical endorsers,
Yes.
and it is a religious body that has blessed off essentially on my resume saying that yes, Tyler Hawkins is a qualified representative of Churches of Christ. And we
Okay.
will endorse him to represent our faith tradition in the military. And
Acknowledging
so
that you're sorry, I didn't mean I did well, I guess I did.
no,
I was about to
yeah,
say something asinine. I didn't mean to cut in, but obviously
no,
I
you're
did.
good. Yeah.
Um, so they acknowledge your role
Hmm.
in the churches of Christ,
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah,
and
that's
they still say, "Hey," or not but, and they
yeah,
still
yeah,
say, "We want you." Tyler, I think it comes down you're not supporting different religions, you're supporting individuals.
yeah, yeah.
I
That's
think it's
right.
what Jesus did.
Yeah,
Jesus didn't support the corrupt Jewish leadership system.
right.
He supported individuals. That's why he could sit with and eat with sinners and tax
Yeah, well,
collectors.
look at the Samaritan woman. I
Yeah.
mean, that's a false heretical denomination of Judaism
Oh,
was
yeah.
the Samaritans, and he was supporting the individual in his counsel to her. Now there was some call to repentance in that, as you know, but there
Sure.
was a level of support in that in a teaching, um, and it didn't have to go to the full extent of disfellowship. It was like, hey, I'm supporting you in this moment and giving you this teaching, and then after that, what she does with it is on her. And so when it comes to perform versus provide, so I perform religious support for soldiers who would be seeking my faith tradition. And so
Yeah.
specifically would be churches of Christ. Broadly
Right.
speaking, most, and I'm just going to put it in quotes, most, Protestant denominational Christianity, you know, would agree with the way that I pray. They would agree with the way I talk about Jesus. They
Yeah.
would agree with most things when it comes to counseling to get through life circumstances.
Yeah.
Now, where the provide comes in is when I'm asked by a soldier who may be Muslim or Buddhist or Norse pagan, and they're saying, "Hey, I need to have these special meals. I need to have my kosher meals because I'm Jewish, or halal meals because I'm
Yeah.
I'm Islamic, and I have a special diet." Okay, well, so now the chaplain, as a chaplain, part of my administrative responsibility as designated by the Army is that I have to go to the commander and say, "Hey, we have X number of Jewish soldiers,
Mhm.
and they can only eat this food. So if you want them to be operative on the battlefield, we're going to have to provide them with this food."
Yeah.
And so that is the provide. I'm not the one providing a special Jewish or Islamic prayer for their food. I'm just ensuring that they are receiving what they need in order
Yeah.
to still operate as a soldier on the battlefield.
Yeah. Oh, man. I just I don't see I know this is on the nose, and it's a very reductive and even childlike way of thinking about it, but I don't see Jesus acting any differently. He would fulfill that role in a perfect way,
Yeah.
but by virtue of the fact that he was fulfilling that role, he's gonna people are gonna follow him.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's
That's
their
right.
job. That's what you
Yeah.
do as a Christian. You fulfill your role in the world because 'cause you're in it, not of it,
Yeah.
and the people
Well,
that you can't sit down across the kitchen counter from, you're gonna affect them along the way.
yeah, I wanted to give a real life example of that. I using that exact example of ensuring that these special food requirements are properly catered to. Um, there was one year was doing some field training where we're out, we're in the woods for like
Yeah.
multiple weeks, right? And we're having to have food in boxes delivered in, and you're eating, out of these bag lunches, MREs, what they're called,
Mhm.
and there was an Islamic soldier that was needing more of the Islamic meals because they were running out, and so I had to make the connections to get more delivered. And he was so appreciative of that. I mean, he was going to go hungry, like it was not
Yeah.
going to be very good. But because I helped him get food, um, guess who was sitting at the next chapel service I offered? He
That
was.
dude, it's
He was there
amazing.
for a Christian, and he knows I'm a Christian, and he knows I was
Yeah.
going to give a Christian chapel service where I am worshiping and praising Jesus, but he wanted to come because I provided for his physical need. And so he was willing to come and support me as I provided for the spiritual need of others.
I'm sure you studied the hierarchy of needs. Who
Oh,
did
it's
that?
been it's
Was
been a
that
minute, but
Maslow?
yes. Yeah,
Was that
Maslow. Yeah.
Maslow? Yeah.
Yeah.
My dog's
Yeah.
named Maslow, by the way.
Yeah.
He's supposed to be my emotional support dog. He's nuts. He's not very supportive. Anyway, um, look at what Jesus did. He fed them.
Mhm.
made sure that they could be alive if they were too sick, and then he took care of their spiritual self.
Mhm.
In Bay, Arkansas, there's the government had to come in and put it in a system of drainage ditches because they needed to claim that farmland, but it would flood.
Yeah.
And so they got this system of ditches. It's really interesting. I think the Army Corps of Engineers came in and did it. My
Mhm.
suggestion is to Google. It's a really interesting story. But I used to tell this illustration on me and Brock Kendall walking down the gravel road beside the Bay ditch, and we hear somebody moaning. And down there in the bottom of the Bay ditch, in a pool of mud, blood, and murky, muddy, bloody water, is a fella with his femur sticking out of his thigh. It's
Mm.
not supposed to happen. Now, this is
Mm-mm.
not a true story. This is an illustration.
Sure, sure, sure.
And so Brock and I, from about 10 feet up, and when the Bay ditch is dug straight down, "Hey, mister, have you heard about our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ?" No, you don't. You call 911 and you
Uh-huh.
make sure that guy survives. Then you
Mhm.
make sure he's mentally stable.
Yeah.
Then you fix him in his spirit, in his soul,
Mhm.
I guess I should say. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's so much more than nobody cares how much you know till they know how much you care. It's
Yeah.
literally a person cannot think about anything, but the more stressed and the more traumatized a person is, the more myopic that person gets.
Mhm.
And the and the ability to dive deep into levels of analysis totally eludes him. It's very surface, very myopic, and you can be so stressed that you can only think of one step forward, which might not be taking a shower or eating.
Yeah.
It may
Yeah.
just be taking the next breath.
Right. That's
Anyway,
right. And the more that as I know that you're well aware, Jesus is the bread of life. And so there is always the spiritual bread that we should be teaching others to hunger for. But that teaching comes when the physical body is able to actually process. And
he had just fed the 5 he just
he had
fed
just
them.
fed them. That's right. He had just fed them, and it's like, now
Yeah,
pursue more than this, right? This is
that's
the
it.
starting point. And so, like, I have so so to be honest with you, because you started this show off, I love that analogy. I'd not heard of Mosher's levels of faith before. I love that. And when I joined the military, I said I wasn't always a chaplain. I was an intelligence analyst my first 4 years,
Mhm.
and at the time I was doing that in the civilian in the private sector as
Right.
well. I was doing part time ministry. I was once a month rotation for a couple churches, but
Sure.
uh, but I was doing intel work outside the military as well. And I got into chaplaincy only because I was doing a transfer. I was in West Virginia National Guard with a great unit there. Loved what I
Mhm.
did, but my wife's family's from Iowa, and so now I'm from Iowa. And so,
Awesome.
yeah, moved to Iowa to be closer to her family. And with it, that meant some career changes, and I was looking at some options. And when I was transferring from the West Virginia National Guard to the Iowa National Guard, the recruiter in Iowa who was doing my transfer paperwork, he sarcastically, and I mean, like, you could, you know, hear the joke, right? Sarcastically said, "You want to be a chaplain?" And I'm like, "Wait, is that like actually a thing? Like, is
Yeah,
that
that's
is that an
awesome.
opportunity?" Like, I had heard it. I mean, I've been in the army for 4 years. I knew of chaplains, but I really didn't understand what they did, how they operated. Um, the only perception I had was kind of like many people do, and that's, well, I could never do something where I'm having to, um, like, I'm not going to go lead an Islamic worship service, but chaplains have to
Absolutely.
do that, and that's what I thought, and that's
Yeah, it
just
was a
not true.
misconception.
It's a big misconception. And so I was like, well, I know you said that jokingly, Mr. Recruiter, but actually, I am looking to change my career and get into more ministry work. And let me learn a little bit more. Let me do some digging, and let me learn a little bit more about the chaplaincy, what's required,
Yeah.
what I had to get a master of divinity. So I went through Freed Hardman to get my degree to be a chaplain.
Oh, I didn't
And
realize that you had to do that. Okay.
yep, yep. So you have to have a minimum of 2 years of ministry experience, and you also have to have a Master of Divinity
Okay.
from a recognized university. The Army has a published list of
Yep.
universities that they approve of, and
Oh, they
so
take Freed.
they
Well, I
do.
guess
They
they
take free.
would. Freed is foot never
Yeah,
mind. You
yeah,
had a
yeah, yeah.
moment there.
No, no, it's no, they're Freed's got all the accreditation. They do a great
Yeah.
job making sure that they meet all the checks for all accreditation. And
Oh, yeah.
so um I bring that up just to say that yeah, I had to have a growing in faith too. And that
Mhm.
was one, understanding what's actually required of chaplains as far as
Yep.
perform versus provide, and as far as the type of care I'm actually going to be doing in application and in practice. And then two, it just took some discernment as well, because there are times if I think about it too much and I become hypercritical, I even start having a little bit of self-doubt. It's like, but maybe I was a little too kind and not enough truthful. But you could do that with literally any
I was gonna
profession
say,
if
yeah.
you press it too far, because I knew that we'd be doing the show today. And so when I was picking up some groceries this morning with the kids, and I'm out at the grocery store, and I'm like, if you really want to get that hypercritical, how could you work in a grocery store if you know that there are certain, um, we'll just say, prophylactics that are there? Could you sell that? You could, because people are going to buy them that aren't married couples, or
Well,
we
could
went
you
to the
sell
library.
it to a 16-year or to a 13-year-old kid that comes by? I don't even know the
Yeah,
rules. You I'm
yeah.
I'm I'm assuming that a 13-year-old kid can go to the prophylactics and buy anything.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and then after the grocery store, we went to the library, and then I was thinking, boy, the librarian, they've got books in here that support other religions, and they've got books that are filled with pornographic material. And it's like, well, how could you be at a librarian where you know that people are going to sign this stuff out? Doesn't that mean that you support them? It's like, well, no, of course not. There's a
Yeah,
big difference between the direct thing that you're providing, and then the way that somebody else uses it is very it's a huge difference. You're not responsible for what other people do. And
absolutely, and even then, it all has to be mitigated with, and
yeah.
I hate to use this term because it sounds like a pejorative, it needs to be mitigated with common sense.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah,
if I got a bunch of yellow cake uranium and
yeah,
some other stuff and started making little miniature 3-ounce nuclear warheads and started passing them out to people,
yeah.
and well, it's not my what they did with it, I'm not responsible for. Well, no,
Yeah,
that's not gonna fly.
yeah, yeah, that's
Okay,
right.
I got a verse, 1 Corinthians 5, I
Yep.
think, and what I can't ever remember the verse. Yeah, therefore purge out, therefore right here, verse 9. This is a New King James, so it's one of those heretic versions that Adam Aaron Dotson turned me on to, one of those new heretic versions.
Yeah,
Alright,
yeah,
no, the longtime listener of the show, they know the story about this Bible. I love this Bible. But it is New King James, and I'm a King James fella, let me tell you. Alright.
yeah.
I wrote to you in my epistle not to keep company with sexually immoral people. Now, if that's all the man said,
Mhm.
we'd have a hard time getting a job. But
Yeah, yeah,
he explains it. Yet I certainly did not mean with the sexually immoral people of this world, or with covetous or extortioners or idolaters. What is a Catholic except an idolater? What is a Muslim except an idolater? How you gonna reach these and again, to finish it out, he's saying
yeah,
if you had to not keep company with everybody that was in sin, you'd have to come out of the world.
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
don't hold the world up to the same standards you hold your brothers and the sisters in the church up to.
yeah. Yep,
And so
that's
I
right.
would and especially after this just 3/4 of this interview now, you're just a person who's fulfilling a role, and your
Mhm.
role is broken down into those 3 bullet points in the 4th bonus, and it's reminding people that you're not an animal, that there's
Yeah,
a higher purpose to your existence, and even though you gotta do some real heinous things in the name of God or in the name of country,
yeah,
authorized by God, I'll say,
yes.
then you gotta understand that you're still tied to that higher, that you're still oriented to the highest possible good that you can conceive.
Yeah, yeah. I believe that a government can only act rightly if it is performing justice in ways that are authorized by God, with an understanding of a sense of the objective nature of morality. And that's part of the chaplain's role too, is advising the commander on such matters. And so
Well,
I'll say something else too, related to this topic, is that after being in the military, I've got a decade of service in, and being a chaplain for 6 of those.
yeah,
um, I feel that if you are the commanding officer, there is much more of an actual spiritual weight on them than as the chaplain, because I'm an advisor. That's it. Like, I don't have any actual authority. I'm there as a advisor. The
Yeah.
commander is the one that he's going to have to wrestle with the struggle of what will he allow and what will he command. And so the impetus is actually on the commander to wrestle with those struggles. And I mean, I fully support my commander now. Every commander I've ever had, I've had great leadership that I've always
Yeah.
worked with. But I'm just saying that really, when it comes down to, if you're really wanting to, push come to shove on, what can or can a chaplain do, at the end of the day, the chaplain is now a critical advisor, and I
Sure.
am providing direct care, and I'm providing chapel services for soldiers. And I love being able to worship and praise Jesus, which I can do openly and freely. I can share the full gospel message. I love being able to do that. But at the end of the day, it's the commander that decides whether
Yeah.
he will allow to have chapel services at certain times, or whether he will allow certain soldiers to practice these certain things. I only provide advisement on, hey, sir, if we don't get food to these Jewish soldiers, they're not going to be effective
Battle ready.
anymore. Like, we have
Yeah.
to take care of their needs. These are
Yeah.
genuine needs. So,
Yeah. Man, your mind is just so obviously you're in it, and I'm a third party looking from the outside. I think like your thing is so much more practical, nuts and bolts, like how the machine runs.
mhm,
You in your mind, you're like, we got to grease this machine and we got to make this machine operate to achieve the objective. And I'm
yeah,
thinking, well, if Tyler don't do what he does, or people like Tyler don't do what they do, then we're going to send a bunch of stinking animals back stateside after their rotation.
yeah,
And I don't know, like we had a bad enough time of that with Nam.
mhm,
Like the people were treated terribly,
yeah,
and it was hard to there's got to be a word for it. I'd say re-assimilate, reintegrate to society. I don't know, but
yeah. Well,
and yeah,
the
sorry.
the only way to keep your humanity is to remember the divinity,
Yeah,
because we're created in a divine image, and when we start acting in ways that are directly contrary to the divine will, we will lose our humanity. And so your animal analogy is a perfect description, because we've seen that in so many places. If you go back to, I can't remember the name of the exact base, but in the early immediate after 9/11, there was some soldiers that um, they'd been in the desert for a little too long,
the pictures that
and
came out.
just the way that they were
Yeah,
desecrating
yep.
body. Oh, it was bad. The
Posing,
black.
I don't even wanna do it.
Yep, I think it was Black Hearts or something. I can't remember. It was a while back, but anyway, the point is that they had been in it for so long without any level of religious support for them,
Yeah.
that I mean, just the evils of the world and being surrounded by death all the time, it got to them.
Well,
And
how
so,
you've got to other
yep,
your opponents.
yeah.
You can't with a group of your peers clear a room. I mean, you gotta think about it like you're going in there clearing out an invasion of pests, of
Mhm.
animals. You can't
Yeah,
think about those people as humans,
yeah,
or at least I don't think that I could.
yeah,
Maybe I'm naive. I don't know, but man
yeah.
alive. I'm
Justice is
feeling the
tough.
weight of this, Tyler. This is affecting me differently
Yeah.
than I thought it would.
Well, justice is tough, and that's where, I would say that, not just as a chaplain, but serving in law enforcement, serving in the military in general,
Yeah.
it's not for all Christians. Now,
No.
of course, I believe Christians can do it, but it's not for all Christians, because
No.
what you are doing is, if you are a Christian who is choosing to serve in a law enforcement role or in a military role, you are placing the burden of God's justice on your shoulders.
Yeah.
And you have to be able to spiritually hold that weight,
Yep.
and do so while maintaining your sense of humanity and love for the enemy. So it is a very difficult balance mentally, spiritually, to understand that God has rightly appointed the government to exercise justice on those who do evil. And I'm willing to put on that hat, but at the same time, when the actual act of applying justice isn't immediately going on, to still love the enemy enough to show them as much care and calls to repentance as is reasonably possible. And to make that switch back and forth, it you can do it as a Christian. It's just not easy.
No. No, no, no.
And I think, and really, I don't want to speak for other people, but I think only Christians can do it consistently and rightly.
Uh, without any previous thought of that, a thought on that statement, I think I'd co-sign that statement about 100% just as it sets. I think it would take somebody with a really strong faith to do it consistently and I guess we'll say rightly.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think I agree with that. Sakes alive, man.
yeah. So, something you mentioned earlier, just kind of alluded to it, but I know it is one of the questions you kind of sent me, and that was
Yeah,
talking about, are you able to? I don't know if you use the word evangelize in the question, but like the type of ministerial outreach that I'm able to
yeah,
do. Like, am I allowed to do, certain things?
uh,
And so,
proselytize.
yeah, proselytize. Yeah, so military doctrine actually forbids chaplains from intentionally proselytizing. So my mission is not to go out and make converts. All right.
Yeah,
My mission is there to provide moral and ethical guidance and to ensure the morale of the unit is good, that people are maintaining moral cohesion, right?
okay,
And then to also perform religious services in keeping with my faith tradition. And so
okay,
what that does though is that actually it's not necessarily a box that I'm being trapped in. It's actually an innovative boundary that I have to where now it's like, okay, I'm not out here with a mindset of making converts, but I know as a Christian, I still want people to come to Christ. So what does mission work look like in that context? And so well, what that looks like is number one, um, I don't I wear my faith on my sleeves. I
literally.
don't hide it, and I'm
Yeah,
allowed to wear my faith on my
yeah,
sleeves. The First Amendment protects chaplains just as much as they protect any other soldier, and I am allowed to talk about Jesus and salvation and grace and faith and baptism. I can talk that all day long. I'm allowed to
yeah,
do that um, because I'm doing is I'm sharing my faith. I'm sharing what I find strength in. I'm
yeah,
sharing what I am encouraged by, and then I just I ask questions. I connect to use your guru analogy. I
yeah,
make connections because I genuinely see soldiers as people created in the image of God, and I genuinely love them and care for them.
yep,
Even if they never become a Christian, though I might want them to, of course I want them to, but even if they never do, I still love them as an image bearer of God. So I'm just gonna ask some questions about, hey, how's your kids? How's your wife? How's your work outside this? And then as those relationships build, I might ask some more pointed questions. I had a great conversation with a Norse pagan soldier some time back now, and he had converted from the Methodist Church to a practicing Norse pagan. Like,
he wasn't following and I'm not being funny. I have for some reason, I have talked to several people who were Norse practitioners. They
yeah.
say, "Well, I'm a follower of the Norse religion." But several people have followed 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 Balder,
Oh, sure, sure.
and I'm like, "That's crazy." Anyway,
Yeah.
we
Hey,
got
well,
another couple hours one day, I'll tell you the story about these guys I'm talking to when you ever heard of Elden Ring?
yeah, oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Never played it,
Well
but I'm well aware, yeah.
well, um, the Bible says don't brag, so I'm just gonna say it as a fact. I'm well above average, and that's not a boon to my credit. It means I play that stupid game too much. But I play with a bunch of 20-year-old kids.
Yeah,
They know what I do for a living,
yeah,
and you ought to see them, hear them trying to clean up their language and this, that, and the other, and
yeah,
but lately, every time I backed off to only get on once a week, and we
yeah,
have these 2 or 3-hour conversations about life and theology
yeah,
and they wanna ask me, "Well, how do what about the human soul?" And I mean, I explained, and I think I proved to them that a human soul exists. You can't deny the existence of a human soul, even if you're an atheist.
yeah,
And I made that ca very interesting.
yeah,
Anyway, I didn't mean to take that. It's just I thought it was crazy that you said you dealt with somebody that
yeah,
had converted to the Norse pagan religion,
yeah.
and it's like, is that on the rise or something? Anyway,
It
I'm gonna
yeah,
bounce
it
it
is.
back to
I
you.
I don't remember the percentages, but it is a rapidly growing, well, just religion, Norse
Yeah, it's
paganism,
crazy.
and, it's growing in the prison system the
It
fastest, more
makes
than anywhere
sense.
else, and a lot of it just has to do with
Disenfranchised folks.
yeah. Well, and then you have like the TV shows that celebrate it, and honestly, it appeals to the more masculine side of men because look, they celebrate things like strength. Um, Whereas thanks to this progressive culture that we live in, Christianity's been emasculated, and that's just not appealing to men who
No,
want to be strong men. And
that's it.
that's not an accurate portrayal of Christianity. Christianity calls for men to be strong, but that's the way that Christianity is talked about today. And I mean, I don't believe I'm a Christian, right? So I believe Jesus Christ is the only way to salvation. But I understand if you are seeking for a purpose higher than yourself, and you've not actually taken seriously the evidences for the Christian faith, and you're just looking for something to motivate you to be more than you are, like I understand the appeal of the Norse
Uh,
paganism. And so
so do I.
just as you've had those conversations, that's yeah, I've had those conversations too. And it all started because I just want to get to know these people.
That's
And
it.
it led to some really good conversation. And so the way that I view it is it is a seed throwing type of ministry, right? And all I can do is just pray that the watering will come. Uh, but I'm just not in a position where I can, intentionally go out and seek converts every single day, and I can be the one that provides the watering every single day. I'm there to represent my faith tradition. I'm there to represent Jesus. And if people ask me questions, I don't hide the truth. I share it quite openly. But I'm
Absolutely.
there as a counselor and an advisor, and that's my primary role.
I put in the chat, "As
Mhm.
you go evangelism." You need to holler at Edwin S. Jones.
Okay.
Here's what I think. I think that if every Christian, and you know how we both define that term,
Yeah, yeah.
functioned as if they would die if they tried.
Oh, I'm not sure if it was me or you, but seem to have lost connection. Oh, the time I can still see the timer counting, but I've lost sound. So first thing I'm going to do, Tony, if you can hear me, I'm just going to mute my. All right, so we've lost Tony. So because I'm just a guest in the show, I actually can't see all the live responses or respond to them to see if you guys can still hear me. Tony's trying to relaunch this and get it back up, and we'll see what we can do. I'm going to give him another minute. There he is.
Oh, hey, here we go. What's happened? How'd
Hey,
we
there we go.
I if I was a betting man, I'd have bet $1 that it was you that messed up, not me. Hitting everything. Look, I wanna get back to where I am. It just
Yeah,
weird. Alright,
yeah.
now, I can't remember what we were saying before we froze. It was something real profound. Oh, yeah, Edwin S. Jones, "As
Yeah,
we go
as you
evangelism."
go. Yeah.
I think if every Christian functioned as if they got caught proselytizing, like passing out Garland Elkins' pamphlet about "Come and see," I love that pamphlet, or just what we consider quote unquote evangelizing, I think individual Christians would convert more people to Christ because it would force them to be innovative and to get out of their comfort zone. And actually, instead of converting people to a capital C Church of Christ denomination, they
Mhm,
would convert them to the lowercase c Church of Christ, the church about which Jesus spake when he said, "Upon this rock I will build my church."
mhm. Yeah.
I think you're actually in a good position. And I learned that, I come up with that whenever, watching, documentaries about films and, like, the Star Wars franchises and, the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings versus Peter Jackson The Hobbit.
Yeah.
Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings didn't have near as much CGI, so they had to get very innovative.
And it was
That's why
better.
the Lord of the Rings stand the test of time,
Yeah.
and the Hobbit trilogy looks like a two-year-old made it on Canva with CapCut. Like, it's bad,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Um, and regardless of which, I think the story's weak. I think it should have been one movie, but
Yeah.
irrespective of that, it's just the CGI doesn't hold up.
Yeah, yeah, and that's kind of the point is when you take this thing that is supposed to make life easier, but then it actually makes it life worse, and that's a great comparison to evangelism. You just say, well, here's this tract, I'm evangelizing, I
Yep.
hand this out. It's like, or you live out the gospel, you build connections and you build genuine relations with people, and then you just be a Christian and share that openly, and that's always be ready to give a defense. Well, that entails that you are living a knowledgeable understanding of the Christian faith, so
That's
that
it.
when people ask you, are you living in such a way that encourages people to ask you? Which on my little bullet points here, that was the last point I was going to make on how do I evangelize, even though I'm not supposed to evangelize, and
Yeah.
that I try to create a culture that normalizes having discussions about religion openly.
Yep.
And because I believe in truth, and I believe that truth will win out, and I'm very comfortable trying my best to just create an environment that normalizes it, so that the Norse pagan can talk about their faith, and the atheist can talk about why they're an atheist, and so
That's
I want
it.
to, yeah, I want to normalize a culture that where it's not everybody's so easily offended today, and that we dance we don't talk about anything of any meaning because we're afraid we're going to offend one another. It's like, well, then how can we ever intellectually engage and build, for lack of a better term, I'm going to say an intimate relationship, but by intimate relationship, I mean, an actual
Intellectually
intellectual,
intimate.
an intellectually intimate relationship
Yeah.
with another person to understand who they are, why
Yeah.
they think the way they do. If we're so afraid of offending somebody that we never have a deeper conversation, and so
Right.
I don't have to make it a goal. Well, how many baptisms did I have at drill this month? Like that's not my job as a chaplain. One, and two, I would much rather have a culture that is accepting of talking about faith openly, so that ideas can be socialized, and so that truth can have an opportunity to win out. It can't win if it's never taught, and it's not taught enough because people are afraid to teach it.
What was it that old, prince of preachers in the Baptist church said? The
Spurgeon.
truth doesn't have to be defended, it's like a line on a chain, just let it off the chain.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Just let it
yeah,
off the chain.
yep,
Listen, Edwin S. Jones be a good contact for you.
yeah,
He teaches As You Go Evangelism.
mhm,
It's wonderful, and it's right along those lines. Listen, we're running out of time quickly. Let's fast forward to final thoughts. Uh,
sure,
Tyler, answer the first off, uh, after you answer these 2 questions, don't
yeah,
let us leave here without saying without telling people about your, ministry, your
yeah,
digital presence, Just
yeah,
Some Christian Guy,
yeah,
and we need to know about wife and children. But
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
answer these last 2 questions. What advice would you give to young Christians considering military chaplaincy hold on, how do you say that?
Chaplain.
Chaplaincy.
Yeah,
That just
yeah,
sounds odd. And
yeah,
then how can brethren better understand and support those serving in this
yeah,
capacity?
yeah. Well, so for the first of those two, giving advice to young Christians who might be considering it, I will say this: it is a good and much needed missionary field, which is weird to say because I just said how we're not supposed to proselytize. There are
Right.
so many people that are good people in the military that have never been exposed to genuine Christian love before. And because of that, they've never had reason to open the door to Christian truth.
Right.
And it is an extraordinarily fulfilling ministry. But as we mentioned earlier, it's not for the spiritually immature,
Mm-mm.
because you are going to be confronted with some very difficult circumstances in life where it is very different than a church setting where you're worshiping with, if you're a dedicated pulpit minister, you know your congregation, you know their history, their life, their background, you know that you are walking the Christian walk with them. But then you get into the military where the vast majority are either not Christian at all or are Christian in name only, but actually have no genuine practice or even care to practice.
Yeah.
And but they still need to know the love and support of Jesus, and then pray that it opens up the doors. So what advice would I give people considering chaplaincy? I would say talk to whatever spiritual mentors are in your life.
Mm.
One, and decide if you feel you are spiritually mature enough to enter into a role where you are going to be counseling in a very difficult circumstance where you're not going to be counseling Christians most of the time,
Yeah.
and you feel you can do that. And then another piece of advice would be to simply consider if military service itself is going to be a good fit for you, because
Yeah.
you have to be able to walk the walk and talk the talk. And so you might be the best counselor in the world, and the military might benefit greatly from you, but the military is a very different culture.
Oh,
And if
if you couldn't hump it in a rucksack,
yeah,
they're not gonna listen to you about how to think.
that's right. There's a certain image, physical and mental image, that you have to be able to maintain, because if you don't, they don't care what you have to say spiritually.
That's it should not we deal with is and is nots here, not
Yeah,
should and should nots. It shouldn't be the case. If you
right.
got something to say, you got something to say, but
Yeah,
it doesn't matter what area of life you're in,
yeah.
you're not gonna get taken seriously if you don't at least look the part.
Yeah, yeah, and so there's, I've had the privilege of meeting a lot of chaplains out there, that had no military experience coming in, um, at all, and they have shared with me just how steep of a learning curve it was for them,
Yeah,
and how much they really struggled to ever make genuine connections. With me, as you can see behind me, I come from a military family.
yeah,
Dad, grandpa, uncle, all military, law enforcement family, dad, brother, law enforcement. Now, you don't have to come from a family like that, but you have to understand that the military culture is a different mindset. And if you want to effectively minister, maybe hang out with some people that are from that background to gauge whether you think you could fit in there.
but keep your mouth shut when you do,
Listen,
because
it's a
you're
time
gonna
for you.
hear things said back and forth between people that are brothers in arms that
Mhm,
you can't repeat, and I'm not talking about cussing or anything like that, I'm just
mhm,
talking about there's ways that people who have been through hell
mhm,
communicate with one another.
mhm.
It's on the oil rigs, it's training horses,
Yeah,
it's sewage cleaners, it's military men, whatever,
yeah.
ditch diggers, bricklayers. There's just a way that men like that communicate with one another. If you can't handle that, don't don't be a Karen and run up in there and try to police them.
Yeah, because that will close so many doors. It
Yeah,
really will. And so that's where I just had the blessing of coming from that type of family background, and of having been in the military before I got into chaplaincy. That having that background just it lessened the learning curve for me getting into
man, that's
chaplaincy.
awesome.
Um,
But
so, but as far as how can the brethren support it? Well, it sounds cliche, but it's not cliche. We need prayer, right? I
well, it's
mean,
cliche for a reason. Like
it's needed.
it's needed.
I 100% believe in the effectiveness of prayer, as all Christians should. And so that I'm aware of. Let's see, the military across the Department of Defense is somewhere like a million, 1 to 2 million strong.
Mhm.
That I
I'm
know of.
saying I'm saying I'm not validating you. I'm
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
saying
yeah,
yes, as in
yeah,
I received your information and it
yeah,
sounds
yeah.
good to me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's in that ballpark, and
Right.
that I'm aware of. Churches of Christ across all branches of military have in the ballpark of about 50 chaplains.
And how many chaplains are there?
Oh, I mean, there's thousands. I
Oh,
don't know that.
man.
So it's mostly, your mainline denominations, right? There's
Yeah.
a lot of
Well,
Baptists, a lot of
they
Methodists.
they beat us out and everything else. I don't know why
Yep.
they wouldn't beat us out in that,
Yep, a lot of
you know?
Lutheran, and so,
Yeah.
yeah, so we just, we all chaplains, right?
Yeah.
Even if I disagree doctrinally with a lot of them, right? Like, we're serving the same role,
Yes.
and we might have some doctrinal differences on Sundays, but in the way that we minister to soldiers, like, we're there to care for the soul of the military,
Yeah.
and by showing love to the individuals,
And
and
I picked up on something, and I'm not mitigating what you're saying,
yeah,
and
yeah,
I'm not well actualing you. This is
yeah,
for people who would listen
yeah,
that
yeah,
might be where I was several years ago. When
mhm,
Tyler is saying well, there might be some, or there are some doctrinal differences on Sunday.
Hmm.
He's not downplaying the importance of that.
Right.
He's not saying that, yeah, well, we're still all serving the same God. We're just going to heaven a different way. That's
Right.
not what he's saying. He is talking about the role of a chaplain only. You're
Hmm.
going to serve with men that have doctrinal differences, but
Hmm.
all of you have the same job,
Hmm.
which I picked up on. Keep these men tied to the metaphysical, to their higher nature,
Hmm.
so they don't come back to the state side, all nothing but base nature. And then the other is keep them in fighting shape, keep them in an order where they can do the job that the military requires them to do, which is blow stuff up and kill people.
Yeah, yeah. No, thank you for that, because it's one of those things that when you're in it long enough, you stop thinking about those caveats. But for so many
Yeah,
out there, it's a necessary caveat. So thank you. And so, but yeah, honestly, it's just prayer, because we're dealing with you know we're dealing with some of the roughest parts of life, right?
yeah,
Across the military, and so just lots of prayer. And if you live near a military base,
okay,
please look into what type of outreach is going on in those bases. So I went through both basic training as an intel analyst at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, and then that's also where the chaplain officer school is,
okay,
in Fort Jackson. And there's a conglomeration of about 4 or 5 churches from the Brotherhood
okay,
around the base, that they pool resources in order to provide um, Church of Christ based chapel services on Fort Jackson on Sundays, because there's not a Church of Christ chaplain on Fort Jackson. And
that's
so
amazing.
they've done that, and they are so I lift those churches up as an example, that if you are worshiping in a congregation and you're wanting to do more than just pray, and you live close to an active duty military base, be proactive and start reaching out. And the first thing to do would just be, you could look at that base's website, and you'll find contact information for the chaplains that are stationed there. Call
Okay,
them or email them. Their contact should be available on that active duty base's website, and just say, "Hey, I'm from XYZ church. We would love to support soldiers on your base. How can we support soldiers as a church in the community?"
it's
And
amazing.
that would be phenomenal if churches could reach out and do that.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Well, let's take like 3 minutes
Hmm.
and tell us some. We should have started with this, Tyler, but I was excited for the material.
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
learned so much,
yeah.
and my I guess there's been so much cement poured into my foundation about this. If there ever was any residual doubt, there is none. It's gone. That in fact, it kinda makes me wanna be a chaplain, but I'm 47 years old and I couldn't get in the shape to be one. Anyway, um, your wife, children, education. Tell us a little bit about you and your platform, Just Some Christian Guy.
Yeah, so just some Christian guy. So you can find me on Facebook and YouTube. Just some Christian guy. My logo is of a cross with the acronym "Just Some Christian Guy" (JCCG) across JSCG across it, and I'm on YouTube as well. I do some writings occasionally, which I post, but I cross post my sermons. So I minister for the Ogden Church of Christ in Ogden, Iowa, and the sermons that I do, I try to. I heard a quote one time. As a Buzz Lightyear analogy, years of academy training wasted, in reference to not allowing a formal Christian education go to waste by just giving an Oprah Winfrey sermon on a Sunday.
Absolutely.
And so the sermons that I give for the church, I get into the meat of the word, because I know the congregation can handle it there. And then we live stream on the Ogden Church of Christ Facebook page. But what I do is I record my slide deck, and I upload that slide deck to my YouTube and my Facebook page, so people can not only hear the sermon, but can see all my bullet points on the screen as well. Right now, I'm preaching through the Old Testament, because the Old Testament is 77% of the Bible, and I don't want anybody to be intimidated by 77% of God's word. So if you're wanting some help understanding the Old Testament, I hope my series has been is beneficial.
That's
Um,
awesome. A Christian staying out of the Old Testament is like a human being staying out of the water. Like a human being growing up never going swimming.
yeah,
I'm not alluding to the religious practice of baptism. I'm just about
yeah,
literally, I
yeah.
had fun when I was a kid swimming in a creek. Well, that's 77 per maybe I
But yeah,
better Google that.
that's pretty close. Yeah,
Yeah, how much water's on Earth? 70%, 75%? I don't know.
it's around that ballpark.
Yeah. But could you imagine never coming into contact with water as a human being and never going into the Old Testament as a Christian?
I know it, and that's why I want 71%. So that's a very very close direct
Yeah,
parallel there. That's good.
guarantee it.
Yeah. So
Yeah, you
so
might
that's
stink as a Christian if you never studied the Old Testament. I mean, you might stink as a human being if you never come into contact with water. See what I
it's
did
it's
there?
it's so rich. That's great. So that's what I enjoy doing as far as ministry goes. That's the work I'm doing now. As far as family and background goes, yeah, happily married 6 years, and got 3 children. I've got a stepdaughter who's at the ripe old age of 18, and then we got our son is coming up on 5. He'll be 5 soon next month, and then I've got a 2-year-old daughter as well. So we've got a full household with ages 2 up to 18. And I mentioned earlier, but I did get my Master of Divinity through Freed-Hardeman University, and nothing but
Awesome.
great things to say about their Bible program is just phenomenal. I mean, not only is the scholarship of their professor corps just the best around, but the hearts of the men there. I mean, they have the heart and the mind of Christ, and so love that. Um,
Listen, Freed Hardeman is good at all, but do you think that David Shannon is ever gonna be a good president? You think he's ever gonna learn how to have a presence on stage and command an audience?
Oh boy, we can pray.
Yeah, we'll pray for him. All right,
Yeah,
go ahead.
let's
Sorry to
pray.
interrupt you.
Yeah, no, you're good. So that's my formal religious education is from Freed Hardman, and life changing just to have that degree of study. Is a wonderful experience. But before that, as I mentioned, I'm a career changer. So I initially embarked in a career in law enforcement and intelligence. So I've got a bachelor's in criminal justice, bachelor's in national security, and a master's in criminal justice. And worked in the private sector as an intel analyst for a number of years, working both for the military and the FBI, providing intel support. And so, yeah, I've done a little bit of everything. Substitute teacher for a while. Once upon a
Awesome.
time, when I needed a job, I picked up a part time job at Lowe's. Done a little bit of everything, but right now, big thing is I'm a Christian, and
That's
that's
it.
the most important thing.
Well, um, I forgot your name. Good grief, Tyler Hawkins. Uh, my problem is, okay, I'm bad with names anyway, but I looked down there, I was trying to say Connie Barden has wanted us to put his contact info in the comments. I
Yeah.
put the link to your Just Some Christian Guy,
Oh, thank you.
and
Yeah.
Connie in the comment section, Just Some Christian Guys in the comment section, and you can get that. See his name, Tyler Hawkins, not Connie Barden, Tyler Hawkins right there.
Yeah.
And, you can find everything you need to find from there. You will enjoy his sermons, and, you'll enjoy his content as well. And I will make a plug that, whenever LaBeth was doing some stuff for digital evangelism, whatever it was that Jonathan and them were doing, she was editing articles and stuff, or putting the articles on the website. She was really impressed with your article, Tyler. You did some kind of comparison between a movie and you applied it to the Bible.
Y Yeah,
And
I
she
did.
she is not free with compliments on writing. She
Yeah,
studied under a very austere and demanding English lit prof that went on to teach at an Ivy League school, by the way. Like,
nice.
she's good at
Yeah,
writing.
I appreciate that. Appreciate her compliments.
Yes, sir. Well, we got to stop, man. I'm so excited. So, Tyler, thank you so much. This has been Tony Brewer with Tyler Hawkins for Christianity Now. We just try to bring you stuff that make us to be sons of Issachar, understanding the times, knowing what the will of the Lord, or knowing how the kingdom ought to go. I butchered that, but Tyler, do you have anything you want to say as we close?
Hey, love you, brother. Love the ministry that you're doing. Thanks for having me on, and just blessings to you, to your family, and to all your viewers as well. We've got great. You put out great content that's very spiritually beneficial to many. So I hope people take God's word seriously, and I hope that what you're providing is helping them understand it. So
Amen. Well, God bless you. Thank you so much. And the feeling is mutual to you. And yeah, we're going to cut her off. This has been, again, Tony and Tyler, and we'll catch you. Well, I can't say anything right now. I may have an announcement coming up. I am going to be out of town. I'm going to have some fill ins. Stand by for the next few days for those announcements. God bless you. We'll catch you on the flip side.